This is Anything Agriculture's Essential Tips for Baby Chick Care Basics. This is a quick video to show you all the things that you need to take care of your new baby chicks. As always, please like and subscribe to Anything Agriculture so I can keep making content for you and your homestead. Raising baby chicks is delightful and fulfilling, and it is so much fun to do, but it does require some careful planning and attention to detail. From the moment your chicks hatch, they depend on you for warmth, nutrition, and safe environment. This guide will be a quick walk you through essential tips that you need to be a good chick parent. These tips will provide you with the best care for your feathered friends. Whether you have bought baby chicks or are hatching your own, you will need a few things to get your chickens started. First, you need large totes. Sometimes livestock tanks work, wooden boxes, as long as there's clean, dry pine shavings. Don't use cedar because that will hurt the respiratory system of the chicks. A heat lamp is essential, as well as fresh, clean water. Use chick waters and a chick starter. Nutrition is super critical at this stage. Make sure you have a chick starter food, not just scratch grains or something like that, but a chick starter. Many of these come medicated to protect against a thing called coccidiosis. Coccidiosis is a nasty little disease that will kill your chicks. Watch for bloody stools or other things that might happen. This usually happens in wet and dirty conditions, so it's going to be very, very important that you keep your chicks clean. Here's a quick diagram of what your brooder should look like. Whether you use a box, a bin, a cardboard box, whatever, you'll want to have at least one or two light sources. Two light sources if you are brooding outdoors in a cold building. You can get away with one if you're doing indoors, not such a cold building. You want to have your food and water separated far enough away so that the chicks can get in and around them, and you need to be able for the chicks to be able to get away from the heat so they don't get too hot. Here's an example of some commercially available brooders that you can buy on the market if that's easier for you. You can also, like I said, make them out of a bin or an old tank water or even a cardboard box. It just matters what you're comfortable with. In these both, you can see where there's only one light and there's ability for the chicks to get away from the light when they get too warm. So these are all options, but make sure you have a place to put your baby chicks when you bring them home. Good feed makes a difference, and you need to make sure your baby birds are getting a starter ration and that you switch them at the appropriate time for the other rations, depending on whether you're doing layers or meat birds. Also, what's the difference between pellets and crumbles? Crumbles are very good for small birds and young chicks. They can get enough of what they need out of that feed by using the small crumbles. When they get older, the pellet feed is great because it has less waste and stores better. If you're brooding a lot of chicks, you may be doing it in a chicken house or in a brooding house. You will need multiple heat lamps if it's cold. You will need to keep multiple waterers going, and you will need to have multiple feeders going for those chicks. Chicks should have free choice feed all the time until they reach to about 8 weeks old. So make sure that your feeding is available to them all the time. If they don't have feed, they will get bored and start picking at each other, and they can actually pick each other to death. So you don't want that to happen. One question I get a lot is, when do you take the heat off of the birds, or how do you lessen the heat? As a chick starts to put in their adult feathers, the need for a heat lamp is lessened. So raise the heat lamp every week as the feathers grow in. They will need more space as they grow. So if you have a small brooding box and chickens are growing larger, you may need to change them into a different brooding area so that they have enough room to grow. Otherwise, they could get too close and start picking at each other's feathers, and then you wind up with another problem with bored chicks that are trying to pick each other. If entertainment is an issue or you are seeing picking, you might want to pick up something like a chick block, or you can DIY those, or start feeding them a little bit of greens. Cabbage is great for this. Any of your greens are great for that. Spinach, cabbage, lettuce, anything that you've got. That will help them not be so bored. It is a very good idea to look at your feed that you're going to be feeding your chicks. You want to use a chick starter. They can be medicated or unmedicated. Medicated feeds are there to prevent coccidiosis. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and it easily kills chicks. If you've ever had trouble with coccidiosis in the past, or chicks that are dying for some unknown reason, it is a good idea to use a medicated feed. If you haven't had that issue, you can use an unmedicated feed. So you're going to look at a chick starter, and you're going to look somewhere between 26 to 28% Protein, a lot of times you can drop it down to 8 to 16 after about 3 or 4 weeks. But 18 to 22 chick starter grower is really good for about 18 to 20-week-old chickens. You're going to see layer feed. A lot of people get confused between starter and layer. Layer feed is about 16 to 18%. These are formulated with higher percentage of calcium than a starter grower because it is to help chickens lay eggs. If you have meat birds, you're going to need a higher percentage feed for the duration of those broilers being brooded. So usually between 8 and 10 weeks, you're going to be killing those birds. You are going to need very high protein foods feed, somewhere about 23 to 28%. You can drop that down to broiler ration somewhere after the 3 or 4 weeks, as long as your chickens are doing really, really well. Common forms of chicken feed you're going to find. Each has their own advantages. Pellets are compact cylindrical feed. They're easy for chickens to pick up. They reduce waste a lot of times because chickens are less likely to scatter them around. They're less likely to try and scratch them. And the pellets will be eaten off the ground as the chickens eat them as they walk around. Also, a pellet is a balanced diet in every bite because the ingredients are evenly distributed throughout the pellet. On the other hand, crumble is essentially pellets that have been broken down to smaller pieces. They're much easier for baby chicks to eat, and those with smaller beaks. So if you have like bantam chickens, this might be an option for you. Crumbles are also a lot of times more palatable for chickens, encouraging them to eat a lot more. Ultimately, the choice is up to you and what works for you. But I like to do a crumble for the first 4 weeks for your flock, and then I would think about going to pellet if pellet is something you were interested in. Good feed makes a difference. You want to get the best starter grower you can get and afford for your chickens. In this picture, you'll see these are 2 brown leghorn pullets. They're both 6 months of age. They have the same parents, the same hatch date, and they were given 2 different types of feed. One was raised on 7% protein and one was raised on 22% protein. You can see that the 22% protein, the larger bird, is a healthier, bigger bird that is going to be able to lay more eggs and live longer and have a longer production rate. It is very important that you make sure that your chickens have enough protein. In the first 4 weeks, you have been taking a lot of good care of your chicks. Now that they're about 4 weeks old, the next 1 to 5 months will be different looking for your chicks. These chicks should be starting to be fully feathered, and they can now be let outside on warm days. You should be lessening the amount of heat unless it's very, very cold. You want to separate quick maturing males from the other hens so that they don't hurt the hens. Adult plumage usually comes in at the end of this 1 to 5 month stage. Egg layers will start laying at about 16 to 20 weeks, depending on the breed. At this stage, chickens can go into their permanent coop to be protected from predators. Coops can be anything from old used buildings to sheds, and I've even seen people use old cars. They need a roost, so you need to make sure that there's a roost for them so that they can remain healthy. Your chicks now are turning into adult birds. And once your chickens now have outgrown your brooder, you will need a place to put them, and they do need to have a secure place to live. They will not just live outside. That makes them a target for raccoons and stray dogs, foxes, and all the other predators that would like to have poultry for lunch. You need to prevent the chickens from wandering off, getting hurt, and getting injured. So you're going to need some sort of coop, and if you're considering some fencing, you're going to look at 5 to 6 foot fencing to prevent climbing predators and to prevent your chickens from flying over, although they probably will anyway. You also want to think about burying the fence a few inches in the ground to help prevent some of the burrowing creatures, such as skunks will dig into there, minks will dig into there. Chicken runs need to be large enough so the chickens can have enough space to spread out and run around. Otherwise, you will wind up with some other issues in your flock, such as picking or other birds just picking on one bird and then possibly killing it. It's pretty nasty when that happens. You also want to have them be able to exhibit their natural behaviors like scratching and pecking and dust bathing. So it's very important that you look at your fencing. There also is electro fencing. It's electro netting fencing that you can put around, and that keeps animals out and it keeps your birds in. Another really important aspect that we don't talk about very often is how much space your chickens actually need. You need to have the largest run you can put your chickens in because that will help their natural behaviors and stop preventing behaviors like pecking or attacking other birds as they're bored. Their mental and physical health is always better when you have a larger run. You need to also provide shade and shelter within that fenced area. So if there's weather that comes up all of a sudden, that they have a place to go. Also, they would like to have shelter to protect themselves from other predators. You need to inspect this fence regularly to make sure there's no gaps or weak spots, because all it takes is one small spot and you will have a mink in there and it can kill your flock overnight. So you need to keep an eye on your fencing to make sure that your chickens are safe. I want to talk a little bit about cockerels. These are young male chickens that can show very aggressive behavior very quickly. Males are useful for breeding, so if you want to breed and hatch out your own eggs, you may want to keep a male on site, but otherwise they are not necessary for an egg-laying flock. Male cockerels for meat birds, this won't be an issue. Your birds will be slaughtered before the roosters will actually have an issue. If you decide to keep a rooster, keep one rooster with your flock because two roosters will fight and a lot of times they'll kill each other. Now, I know a lot of people are wanting to raise chickens for egg production, and that is a great goal. Farm-raised chicken eggs are some of the best you'll ever get. They taste wonderful, but they aren't necessarily cheaper than store-bought eggs. They take a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money to get them to laying eggs. And they won't lay eggs until they're at least 16 to 20 weeks old, which is several months. So you need to keep them happy and healthy all of that time. When they start laying eggs, they're going to be small because they're learning how to do it. Their bodies are learning how to do it. So for the first couple of weeks, you'll get a bunch of little tiny eggs. Yes, you can eat them. They're absolutely fine. They're just tiny. And then after a while, the chickens will produce more eggs. Then the chickens will produce really well for a year or two. By year 3, they'll start really dropping off in egg production. A lot of times they will stop laying eggs altogether. And a chicken can actually live for 5, 6, 8 years. So you need to have a plan on what you want to do with those chickens once they stop laying eggs. If you find yourself in a bind and your coop isn't quite ready, you can do one of my quick and dirty greenhouses, which I have another video and another article written about. All you have to do here is change the plastic to a tarp and put in some hardwire cloth to protect your birds, and you now have a chicken-proof shelter for your chicks. This is very useful if you have a delay in getting your regular coop ready, or you're going to do some meat birds and you're not going to have them for very long. Check it out on my page, and it's called The Quick and Dirty Greenhouse. I want to do a quick note about meat chickens. These are your Cornish cross or meat chickens. These chickens mature very, very quickly, and they will be much larger than your egg-laying birds very, very quickly. You will need to make sure that you know what you're doing when you're processing these birds, because they will need to be processed somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks at the very, very latest. And a lot of times you'll lose a lot of birds between 8 and 10 weeks because they were meant to be processed much sooner. So make sure you have a plan on how to get those birds processed if those are the birds that you have in your flock. Thank you very much for watching this video from Anything Agriculture. Please hit the like and subscribe so I can continue to bring content that is for you, the small farm homestead person. Thank you.